Today, I'd like to introduce you to a unique problem of the 21st century: presidential candidate drama.
The former president and 2024 presidential candidate arrived at the courthouse in Lower Manhattan this morning.
Now, over the 200-year history of the United States of America, there have been many presidential elections. There has always been controversy, as is expected when political candidates butt heads, but oftentimes this controversy has been fueled by opposing parties being passionate about their candidates. That is no longer the case. While some voters still adamantly support Joe Biden or Donald Trump, much of the debate surrounding their upcoming bout for office is fueled instead by distaste for the opposition. This isn't uncommon, but in the current election, this hatred is generally stronger than any enthusiasm on the other side, and most voters are weighing their hatred for the opposition and apathy or distaste for their own candidate. Neither Biden nor Trump, it seems, are particularly fit to run a country. There are complaints on either side due to Biden's lackluster performance during his first term and his old age, and Trump's consistent scandals, crimes, and anti-democratic sentiments, as well as his age. But the stakes are very high this year, with so many things in the balance and a Supreme Court that opposes many of the rights that have come over the past several years, including LGBTQ+ rights, women's productive rights, and civil rights. This year, for the first time, Gen Z could become a major force in the election, with the oldest of Gen Z now in their late 20s. But many in Gen Z are none too pleased about this prospect. This is going to be your first time voting in a US election. Does this idea particularly excite you?
No. Not this election.
I would say that it makes me a little bit nervous, but it also excites me a lot, yes.
Do the options for candidates excite you?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Absolutely not. As someone who is younger and as someone who is pretty far left in terms of what I value and what I think we should see in American politics, I don't think that any candidate would really be along the lines of what I would be looking for.
Do you think that either candidate really has your best interests in mind, in your opinion?
I don't think they have my best interests in mind. I think that they keep on wanting to play to idealized standards of what they think each side wants, but not necessarily to what any individual person wants, or really what most people want.
Well, as a relatively wealthy white person, yeah. But as a human being on Earth, no.
Do you have an idea of which way you'll be voting, and if you're comfortable sharing why?
I'm probably going to vote for Joe Biden. And that is just because I think that I'm worried about voting for a third party and taking votes away from Joe Biden and lending towards Donald Trump.
I most likely will end up voting Democratic because I have my own grievances with Trump.
Donald Trump is someone who, even though I understand why a lot of people are frustrated and I understand the working class complaints, is really good at psychologically challenging people and making them say, you know, well, what if all of these like minuscule changes that other people are doing are wrong and what I'm doing is going to be this big change? He's good at saying that and not doing that. Joe Biden is really the only one who seems to have any interest in de-escalation, and so those are the two main issues that I think are going to seal the deal for Biden for me.
As you can see, our new voters are anything but fired up. But this isn't just the case with Gen Z. Gen Xers are disillusioned as well. Remember, these candidates are at the oldest end of the boomer generation, the age of many of their parents. Are you generally a person who votes in elections?
Yes, I've voted in every presidential election since I turned 18.
Yes, I am.
And will you be voting in this upcoming election?
Yes, I will.
All right. Does the prospect of the upcoming election particularly excite you or make you want to vote?
It makes me want to vote because one of the options is unthinkable, but that doesn't mean it excites me.
No, I can't say I'm that excited about the options this year.
Do you think either candidate has your best interests in mind?
I think that Donald Trump emphatically doesn't have anyone but Donald Trump's best interests in mind, and he's profoundly dangerous. That doesn't mean that Joe Biden excites me in any way, and I think this is a real problem. We haven't had a really competitive race for the Democratic nomination, and we're faced with a Democratic presidential candidate who many people are utterly unexcited by, and that's not great.
My best interests, I don't know. I mean, generally, I'm aligned with the Democratic Party. I've been a lifelong Democrat, and in general, I find that the Democratic Party has my best interests in mind. But I've found that, especially since the Republican Party has become so much more conservative, the Democratic Party has become a lot more centrist and has just sort of become a lot weaker, and it makes it very difficult for me to be totally aligned with the Democratic Party. So I would say of the two, the Democratic Party in general has my interests in heart, but you know, and it's tricky because I would say I'm typically more progressive than where the Democratic Party is now.
But is this just about the election? It seems like a systematic problem. Our two-party system, more than ever, seems to be causing distress and leading us to more and more failure. Some believe it's time for a change. If you could redesign an aspect or redesign the entire system, what changes would you want to be made?
Potentially add more parties.
I would have a real functioning multi-party democracy.
I think that we are really struggling with the two-party system. I think that it's gotten to be almost monopolistic.
To, or at least more dominant parties, to increase who can be voted for, or like increase options that will actually be viable.
Where candidates didn't choose their voters, and instead voters chose their candidates.
The only thing that the two parties agree on is that there should only be two parties. So, when I look at some of the systems in Europe where there's more sort of ranked voting and coalitions, that seems like it might be a better way to actually take into account the interests of more people and get a wider field of candidates running.
And until we have that, we're going to relive this same cycle over and over again.
So where does that leave us? Our system is flawed, our voting is fueled by hate, and no one is happy. Do we just settle for that? I don't think so. Every day, activists are working towards a better future for America. One where we can all vote for who we want and who's going to give us what we need. But that's a slow process. In the meantime, this election is far too important to sit out on. This is your chance to be heard. Sometimes you have to hold your nose and do what's right for our country before you can start the real fight for a better system and a better future. We can do this together.